For decades, one of the biggest questions in American public life has been just how rich is Donald Trump? The numbers seem to fly all over the place, right? So we're going to cut through all that noise and build a real, evidence-based picture of his wealth, step by step. So this is the big question we're tackling. We're going to follow the money, from his days as a famous New York developer, right through his time in the Oval Office, and into the, well, pretty dramatic financial shifts that are happening right now. It's a heck of a journey, with some turns you might not expect. All right, first things first, to understand where he ended up, we need a solid starting point. Let's get a clear picture of his wealth right before he jumped into presidential politics back in 2016. So what were we looking at? Well, according to a 2016 estimate from Forbes, this was the number, about $3.7 billion. This is a really important figure for us. Think of it as our anchor, our baseline, established by independent financial journalists at the time. So where did that $3.7 billion actually come from? Well, it wasn't just sitting in a bank account. It was mostly tied up in big physical assets, iconic real estate like Trump Tower, his whole network of golf courses around the world, and all those lucrative deals where he just licensed out the Trump name. But, and this is absolutely crucial, you have to look at that last point. There was also a ton of debt, which, of course, gets subtracted to find that final net worth. And here's where things get interesting, right from the start. While respected outlets like Forbes were landing around that $3.7 billion mark, Trump himself was claiming his net worth was way higher, like around $10 billion. This huge gap in valuation, well, it would become a pretty consistent theme over the years. Okay, so he walks into the White House as a billionaire. The next big question is pretty obvious. Did he get richer while he was in office? Let's take a look at what the numbers from that period actually tell us. The data shows his wealth didn't actually grow during his presidency. In fact, it kind of bounced around and even dipped a bit. A lot of his businesses, especially in hospitality and at the golf resorts, got hit really hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Plus, the value of some of his big city commercial real estate also took a hit during those years. Now, people always bring up the presidential salary. And yeah, it's $400,000 a year, but we've got to put that in perspective. When you're talking about assets measured in the billions, that salary is, and I mean this literally, a statistical rounding error. It has basically zero meaningful impact on the overall net worth numbers we're looking at. Okay, now we get to the most recent chapter of this story, and this is where things take a really dramatic turn. After he left the White House, his entire financial picture started to change, and I mean drastically. And wow, this chart just lays out the whole story in one glance, doesn't it? You can see that pre-presidency high, then the little dip around the time he left office in 2021, and then look at that, a massive estimated surge after 2024. The sheer scale of that jump is the real headline here. So, what are the new numbers? Well, recent estimates from both Forbes and Bloomberg now put his wealth in a much higher range. We're talking somewhere between $5.5 to over $7 billion. That's nearly double his pre-presidency net worth. It's a staggering increase. The obvious question is, why? How did that happen? Well, this slide breaks down the three main reasons. And the biggest one, by a long shot, is the stock market launch of his new company, Trump Media and Technology Group. See, its value isn't really based on traditional things like profits. It's tied directly to his political brand and his massive following. That makes it a powerful new money-making machine for him. On top of that, you've got new ventures in things like crypto and a big rebound in money coming from his classic assets like the golf resorts. Now look, we can't have a real discussion about Trump's wealth without tackling the whole hidden wealth question. It always comes up. So let's do our best to separate what's actually been documented from what's just speculation. This slide really lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got what we know for a fact. We know his finances aren't totally transparent because so much is in private companies. We also know for a fact, because of multiple lawsuits, that how he values his assets has been officially disputed. But then on the right, you see the more extreme online claims, things like secret trillion-dollar offshore accounts, for which there's just no verifiable evidence out there. And to give you a really concrete example of a documented dispute, this quote is key. The civil case from the New York Attorney General alleged that asset values were inflated by billions of dollars over several years to get better loan terms. This gets to the heart of the real documented controversies. It's not about hidden accounts. It's about big disagreements over the value of the assets we already know about. Okay, We have covered a lot of ground here. So let's pull all of these different threads together and figure out the final takeaway. What does all this mean? This table really simplifies the entire story. You can see those three distinct financial chapters we talked about: the billionaire candidate, the presidential plateau where things stayed pretty flat, and now this dramatic post-presidency surge fueled by these new ventures. So the bottom line is, yes, he was already a billionaire, but his wealth has seen its biggest growth by far since 2024. This helps explain why you're always seeing so many different numbers in the headlines. You see, valuing a private collection of real estate and brands is not like checking the price of a public stock. It's super subjective. Then you throw in ongoing legal fights and the fact that different analysts use different math. It's no wonder the final estimates can be billions of dollars apart. And really, all of this leaves us with one final thought. The story of Donald Trump's wealth isn't just about one man's bank account. It's a fascinating look at the challenges of valuation, of transparency, and that blurry line between public figures and their very private assets. It really makes you wonder, when wealth is structured this way, can we ever truly know the full story?